welcome Dr. Leslie Macuso, my co-host, for joining us.
Good morning, Deb. And first, let me thank Deb and the entire team of the World Trade Center Institute. It is an extraordinary day, as always. We're sold out, as always. And this is just a day that speaks to what we as women are doing in the world. And in the first two sessions, you're going to hear a lot about the role, the important role women play in business and in healthcare. Now, the first panel is about globalization in healthcare. And I have an extraordinary group of women who are leaders within their own industry and are working internationally and are from Maryland. But before we get into these amazing women and their stories, I wanted to first give you the context of what we mean about globalization. You know, globalization has always been about reaching beyond borders. And actually, it's not new. It's not a new discovery. In fact, dynasties and businesses and leaders throughout history have always been trying to reach beyond the normal borders that they have. Today, when we're thinking of globalization, think in terms of the integration of markets, of culture, of technology. Think of the forces that affect globalization, like economic stability, as well as technology advances. Now, healthcare is not immune to globalization. In fact, healthcare has been directly affected by globalization. And what you're going to hear today from each of the speakers is how that's affected the industries that they work in. Now, what I've decided to do is have that each of our panelists introduce themselves first. I'll go last, because these are truly industry leaders in and of themselves. Our first panelist that I'd like to introduce is Dr. Jallal. Dr. Jallal is the Executive Vice President for Research and Development for MedImmune, a successful biotechnology development firm located in Gaithersburg, Maryland. Dr. Jallal, would you tell us your personal story?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you. I'm very honored to be here. So I had the research and development in MedImmune. MedImmune is part of the AstraZeneca. We are the biologics arm of AstraZeneca, and as such, actually, we have 50% of their pipeline. So I'm really honored to be here. And first, let me share with you my story. So my journey started in Morocco. I was part of a family of 7 kids with 5 girls. So imagine 5 teenagers in all. So my mother had to raise all of us by herself since my father died at a very, very early age. And it's really thanks to her determination that all 5 of us, actually as women, were the first generation of college graduates in our family. So that determination, I hope, and I think I inherited from my mother, because she was, this is a woman who never went to school herself, but actually I can tell you that she is the smartest woman I know, and I'm sure you have women like that in your life as well. So after that I went to Paris, where I did all my schooling and I received my PhD. And then I went to Germany to do my postdoctoral studies. I had the opportunity then to move to the US, and I really could not make up my mind if I wanted to stay in academia or go to biotechnology companies. So I just did both. I had my lab within a biotechnology company where I had my graduate students. And one day, a patient came to actually thank the people for a medicine that they were working on that changed her life. And she didn't know that she changed my life. So since then, I didn't look back, and I knew that my mission and my passion would be in healthcare and really bringing medicines to patients. So that really taught me one thing: it's important to have a passion, it's important to have a mission in life, and I'm trying to teach that to my 2 daughters. I'm not going to say they're ageless, but they're one. They're 15 and 20. We can do it. We're amongst friends here. So that's my story. I think when having had the opportunity to live around the world and to travel the world, I know that there is still a lot for all of us to do in healthcare. So thank you.
Krieger Institute right here in Baltimore. Dr.
I'm so honored to be here amongst these amazing women. So my story starts when I was a little girl, and I can remember being in elementary school with another little girl in my classroom who was, as they call it these days, a SPED. And so that meant she was in special education. And everyone made fun of her, and I could never understand why. She seemed just so perfect to me. And so, you know, I grew up, my name is Rebecca, I really do come from Sunnybrook Farm, and where I live in my happy little world is a very happy little place because nothing's impossible in my mind. And so when I graduated from high school, I thought that I was going to be a math major. I was really good at math. And then I took a class by mistake, and that class transformed my life, and it was a class in child development. And so I became a speech pathologist, and after working for a few years as a speech pathologist, I thought, you know, these children who are trying to learn how to communicate are expending so much of their life energy, and so much money and resources are going into making these children be all they can be. But I wonder if any of it really could be laser beamed to make the process go faster, and I knew the only way I could figure that out was to learn how to do really good research. And so I got my PhD, and then I did my postdoctoral training at Johns Hopkins and joined the faculty there, and started working in the field of autism. And what I discovered was that the care for autism was really variable, really disjointed, and families just were struggling immensely. So I determined that I would have a Center for Autism. And lo and behold, it came true at Krieger Institute, where we integrate research and clinical practice and outreach and training. And so I've been fortunate enough to be able to travel to many countries to provide clinical consultations and training professionals, and involved in research collaborations, and really pushing the envelope as far as I can for kids.
Great. So involved in the story, I forgot what my role was. Thank you so much, Rebecca. And our last panelist, but certainly not least, is a woman that most of you, I hope, know. If you don't, she is a renowned leader, and a renowned woman leader at that. Vinita Gupta is the CEO of Lupin Pharmaceuticals, a world-renowned international pharmaceutical company with offices both in Baltimore and in Mumbai, Italy. India. She is responsible for North American and European business. Under her leadership, Lupin has emerged as a leader in the U.S. generic market, and is the only company from India to have successful brand business in the United States. It is indeed my honor to have her on the panel, Vinita.
Thank you very much for this honor. First of all, I have to say, I've never, very seldom had the opportunity of presenting to such a beautiful audience. The majority of my presentations are to the investing community, which is primarily male, so this is a true honor. So let me tell you about my story, which is pretty much intertwined with the company story in the US. I had the opportunity of bringing Lupin is Indian, the parent company is in India. I had the opportunity of bringing Lupin into the US market. 10 years ago, Lupin was primarily an emerging market company with 70% of its revenue in India. Our chairman, my father and mentor, had the vision of getting Lupin into the US market, the largest pharmaceutical market in the world, and gave me the opportunity to lead the strategy and implement it, which I did. Well, not everything went per plan, but we emerged as the 5th largest generic company by prescriptions in the US pharmaceutical market, and the only company out of India to have a successful brand business alongside a generic business. A brand business that focuses on pediatricians, bringing valuable medicines to the pediatric community. So today, 50% of the company's revenue is developed markets, which was our chairman's vision. And the US is the largest part of the company's global revenues, $500 million of the company's global $1.5 billion revenue. So as I got started, I'll tell you a little bit about my triumphs. As we got started and built a strategy to get into the US market, we built a strategy around Lupin's core competencies, strengths in generics that had a tremendous relevance to the US market, with the goal and objective to bring affordable medicines into the US pharmaceutical market. In early part of implementing the strategy, we had a major challenge. One of our first few products that was intended as a generic, the brand disappeared from the market. And we need a brand to have a generic opportunity. So if there's no brand, there is no generic. So we turned the challenge into an opportunity and became the brand. We licensed the trademark with 3 people in the office, myself and one of my colleagues is right here in the room, and the other is back in the office in the Renaissance building. With 3 people in the office and a virtual infrastructure in the US, we launched our first brand 7 years ago, started detailing to the pediatric community. Just like any startup, it was not a smooth run. The first year was full of challenges. All assumptions had been challenged, but we were determined that we were going to succeed. So the second year we broke even, and the third year we turned a profit. So that was the foundation for our brand business, which has now become a significant part of the company's US business, as well as a significant part of the company's global profitability. Likewise, we also established a very strong generic business in the US. In a period of 7 years, we started with 0 and organically built our generic business to what is now the 5th largest generic company in the country by prescriptions. We brought a number of very important medicines at a low cost, at affordable cost, to the US market. So as I think about the takeaways, as I sit back and think about the reasons for our success, there are 3 that top the list for me. First is our strategy, which I thought was the right strategy. It was focused on Lupin's core competencies out of India and had strong market relevance. Second was a spirit, an entrepreneurial spirit, the determination to succeed. I'm getting out of time, so I'm going to be very quick. We turned our challenges into opportunities. We adapted very quickly to the changes in the marketplace to be able to establish a business. And third was create a stellar team, a team that had a high degree of competence as well as a total alignment to the company's vision. So that in brief is my story.
Thank you so much. And one of the things she and I were speaking about before that perhaps some of you know, but maybe all of you don't, is the pharmaceutical industry. Although you hear about women comprising 85% of the healthcare workforce, the pharmaceutical industry in general is very much a male-dominated industry. So we were sharing examples of meetings that we've both been in where it's all men and one woman, being her or myself or others. So it's incredible. Thank you, Vinita. Well, obviously, let me just tell you a little bit. My personal story in 3 minutes or less. We do have a time card over here, so that's why we're keeping ourselves tight today. Many of you have probably heard me before in other years, but I'll tell you a little bit more of my personal story. I was raised in Connecticut. My father was a truck driver, and they were graduating from high school. My mother was an LPN who went back to school to become an LPN when there were 4 children in 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, and 4th grade. Because in her family, only the boys could go on to school. The girl could not. And so my father put her through nursing school. I then went on and wanted to be a nurse. Became a nurse, was a neonatal ICU nurse and a pediatric ICU nurse. And had the opportunity while I was teaching at the University of Penn to go overseas. Now, given my background, I had never been to Florida. I had never been only to one other state, which was Massachusetts. So for me to be able to go to Poland under martial law and look at the needs of children, for me to be able to go to Nicaragua during the war and look at the needs of mothers and children, as well as go to Costa Rica as an expert, truly changed my path in my career. And I always tell people, take that risk. your path, you can't prescribe what your path will be. I then decided that it was important that if I was going to move into this field, I needed to get a PhD, which I did at the University of Penn in organizational leadership. And then went on and decided I needed to immerse myself in the international arena. That I saw the needs of women and children, but most importantly, I knew that my interest was helping the countries to figure out how to help themselves. So I was only interested in going to nonprofits that did that. I started at Project Hope, and I then took over as the CEO of Jhpiego about 10 years ago. I took over at a time that Jhpiego was having a very difficult time. It was only around a $5 million nonprofit. But it was known around the world for its work in helping midwives and nurses and countries take care and learn the latest, the newest technology, the low-cost way to save their women and children. So it was about building the capacity of countries to do for themselves. It is now, credit to many of my team that are here today, $150 to $170 million nonprofit, working in close to 55 countries, all focused on preventing the needless death of women and their families. So people say, when I looked yesterday, I wanted to tell you how many countries I have been to in the last 6 months. And in the last 6 months, I've been to 14 countries in Africa and Asia. So people always ask me, Leslie, what's the tidbits that you do to keep your sanity? And I say to them, first, keep your things, your travel things all separate. Keep them all in one part of your closet so that you never have to repack cosmetics. You never have to repack shoes. You never forget things. Everything's in a corner, as my husband just doesn't even look. Also keep your balance to who you are. It's really important to me. I have a tradition when I come home, and some of you know this because they wrote about it. I've been doing this for 21 years with my husband. When I come home, he greets me with flowers at the airport. He has done that for 21 years. Isn't that amazing? It started when I travel, I send him a postcard. In some ways, which he loves. He loves the stamps. I don't know. He loves the stamps. He's always loved the postcards. When I come home, the first thing I do after I take a shower is I change and I go out to dinner. And I know that sounds crazy when you've been traveling for 40 hours. I've been way out in remote areas. I'm exhausted, but it gives me that balance. So, usually when I come back to Baltimore, I'm out in Little Italy because I really need my Italian food when I come home. And I'm out in Little Italy and I'm getting that balance, and that 2 hours regroups me to kind of talk about what happened and to get myself rebalanced so that I'm ready to get the energy ready for the next trip that might be 3 days away. So that's just little tips that one has. There's many more if you want to ask me later, but little personal tips. Okay, so there you see who I am. Now, I have some questions for each of the speakers, and I wanted them to kind of really tell about their expertise and what they're doing. So first, I'm going to start with Dr. Jallal. She's really happy I'm starting with her. Dr. Jallal. Globalization has impacted almost all aspects of society, from the jobs we have, the clothes we wear, what we eat, and how we stay healthy. How do you think globalization has improved the quality of healthcare, and specifically our access to life-saving interventions, drugs, medical research, and the like? And how do you think it's improved the lives of women?
Thank you. Well, I think you said, Leslie, at the beginning, globalization, if we think, sitting in this room, what it did for the healthcare is pretty amazing. I think this is, as I always call it, this is the best of times. We have the best medicines. We eradicated some of the... Oh, sorry.
Can you hear now?
Yeah. So it's done marvelous things for us, and most importantly, we have a lot more access. Obviously, the technology, the travel, everything is a lot easier. But I think to continue on women, what it did for women is, as we all know, we are the caregivers at home, and we are the ones who make the decisions on the healthcare and everything. So giving more information and more access and being better informed, that's what's happening really in the healthcare. But it would be amiss if we don't talk about the other side, right? So this is the globalization also opened our eyes on everything else that is still to be done. We're fortunate
but at the same time, we're not doing enough, and we should do more. And I think Leslie is fantastic what you're doing, and we need to do more. And not only the non-profit, but also the profit ones for the global. I think on a positive way, as we think about research and development, it's helping us actually to understand diseases that are very specific in China or others, that we can tailor the medicines to these to the populations. But again, the globalization, the other side of the globalization with the technology and the ease of travel, any health crisis that we saw it in the H1N1 or the AIDS or something like that, it's no longer just going to affect somebody somewhere, it's affecting everyone. So I just want to finish by saying that it's really important, especially for I call them the rich countries, to take care of the poor countries, because then they will be taking care of themselves actually.
I think that's a great point, and I think in our next panel we're going to be talking even more about that effect of reaching out and understanding that what affects one country really affects our whole world. Thank you so much. That's really great. Dr. Landa. Dr. Landa, as you recall, is with the Center for Autism and Related Disorders at the Krieger Institute. Now, for those of you that may not know, but I hope you all know, it is the gold standard for the diagnosis and treatment of children with autism spectrum disorders. The work being done by her and her colleagues has made it a U.S. leader in addressing this epidemic. But what we all know is it's an epidemic that's global. It's an epidemic that affects children all around the world. So my question, Dr. Landa, is, have you seen globalization as a benefit or a detriment in addressing and treating autism around the world? Also, what do you think makes the U.S. such a powerful force in this field?
So it depends on what part of the world we're talking about in terms of whether this is a benefit or a detriment. But I can tell you that within cultures in the U.S. and around the world, that diagnosing a child with autism redefines the child. And so suddenly it draws lines around a person that didn't previously exist. And we do that because we know that early intervention alters the course of development of children to optimize outcomes, and it changes the entire family well-being. But in some countries, India, for example, if a child is diagnosed with autism, that means that there's something very wrong with this child, usually it's blamed on the mother, and that means that the father can leave the family and remarry and have children with another woman. So it can be very destabilizing. And so, and autism can be quite stigmatizing and lots of other problematic things. So when we talk about carrying the Western knowledge into other countries, there's a translation of knowledge that needs to occur that goes beyond linguistic translation. And so what we really need to be translating is the whole concept of the child, the family, and how the family relates to the community in ways that make sense for that culture. And so there's just a lot of understanding that needs to go into things. And so I do see this as a benefit and a detriment, hoping that as we carefully and methodically and thoughtfully and respectfully move forward in the translation of our knowledge into other cultures, that it will ultimately be a benefit for all. Why is the U.S. a leader? The U.S. is a leader because we do see autism as a neurological disorder that is treatable. At this time, it's not curable. We don't have a medical test. We don't have a medical treatment for autism. And so in the United States, we are investing a lot of energy into research to really dig down into the depths of what causes autism and how to treat it and improve outcomes. And I think that that's really put us on a very positive, goal-oriented path that's healthy for children and families.
Wonderful, thank you. It shows you really the impact of globalization in both ways, which is really quite interesting. Vinita, as I said before, she's leading CEO of Lupin Pharmaceuticals. And as I spoke and we talked earlier, I've had the distinct privilege of traveling around the world and meeting incredible health workers that are working in the most difficult conditions in developing countries. But I've also seen the benefits of generic medicines and what they've been able to do to save enormous lives around the world. So I wanted you to speak a little
I think most of us know that there have been a lot of cost containment issues related to healthcare expenditure around all the major countries, both the developed countries as well as the developing countries. The generics have played a major role in reducing healthcare spend. You look at US alone, in the last 10 years, generics have saved $930 billion in healthcare spend in the United States. Likewise, in Europe, $500 billion in Europe. And in countries like India, other parts of Asia, Latin America, affordable medicines are the way patients get access to medicines, because they can't afford a high-priced brand product. So generics have played a major, major role. In the US, 80% of the prescriptions that are dispensed in the country are generics, while 20% of the dollars are generic. So you can see the difference between the brand and the generic spend. Every week, generics save $3 billion for the US healthcare expenditure. So it's had a tremendous, tremendous impact in healthcare spend, as well as in the pharmaceutical industry. So India plays a strategic role and has really transformed the way the generic industry works around the globe. India always had a strategic advantage. The generics are equivalent copies of brand products, where the critical ingredient is the active pharmaceutical ingredient, which controls the cost of the product as well as reliability of supply, which is critical for generics. And India is a world leader in manufacturing active pharmaceutical ingredients. In last year, 50% of the filings that have gone to the FDA for APIs came from India. If you look at the generic companies within the US pharmaceutical industry, 25% market share belongs to the Indian companies. And the Indian companies are the fastest growth companies in the top 20 generic companies in the country. So major, major impact that India has had. I expect in the next 5 years, India to be 35 to 40% of the US generic industry. Also, India is investing into areas, because of the cost advantage that we have in India, we're investing into areas that are still high barrier areas for generics to target. And there are areas like biologics, which it's very onerous to bring a biologic, a biosimilar into the market. Also, the FDA has not come up with a clear pathway for biologics into the US market. India is investing in that direction.
So much. Obviously, we have a lot of programs in India. All my staff is Indian that are in the country. I have close to 80 staff there. And they are all involved in helping create some of our lowest innovative ideas around saving mothers' lives. So it's great. It's great to hear those stories. A few moments about how I saw how Jhpiego has looked at globalization. 10 years ago when I took over, we always described ourselves as the field and the headquarters. And I think any of us that are in organizations now no longer can do that. Certainly with the expertise that's occurring around the world, there is incredible expertise in Africa and Asia and the countries in which we work, Latin America and the like. And so we really had to shift our look at organizationally how we define ourselves as one family. In fact, we call ourselves a Jhpiego family, and I think back to even the origins of why we started that. At the same time, because you have expertise, it changes the way you work as a nonprofit. I now have experts that are in Africa. If I need expertise within another country, they can move between countries. They aren't necessarily all coming from the United States, because there are experts from Zambia going to Tanzania, from Indonesia going to Afghanistan, from India going into Malawi. And so we have that cross and that expertise. And with communications and technologies of today, that's what happens. But we touched on this a little bit earlier when Rebecca and others, Dr. Jallal, were talking about what happens in our world around globalization. People always say to me, why are you helping over there? Not always, but you do have those people that ask, why? And I look at them very comfortably and say, let's think about it. If we are able to save women's lives in low-resource countries, these women themselves will be more productive, will have jobs, will be the economic drivers for their country, will build stabilities for their countries, and will grow from there. And you're going to hear about that a little bit in the next panel. At the same time, I talk about if a mother lives, think about it. What we know statistically is if a mother lives, the likelihood of a child living is 10 times greater. Because we see it every day. A mother dies, a child is 10 times more likely under the age of 2 to die. We also see that if a mother dies, the child will not get vaccinated, the child will not go to school because they're taking on parenting roles, the child will not be a productive part of society, and therefore that country in and of itself will not be stabilized. So for those that ask, why are we helping? Why are we not? Helping women survive, helping families stay intact, builds productive countries that are on the economic planet, that are buying products, are consumers, and are contributing to the stability and the economic stability of our world. And so that's how I view globalization. That's how I view it driving us as we're looking at one world, one Jhpiego family, and one principle, and that is preventing the needless death of women and their families. So, do I have any more time, or am I ready for questions? Okay, I have 2 minutes, so here it goes. The quickest question you ever had. Healthcare has historically been seen as a female-dominated profession, which we talked about earlier. Given our leadership in the industry, what traits have you observed among successful women in healthcare? And if each of you could just, a couple seconds on what traits do you see make women successful in healthcare? Vinita.
I see the most successful women in healthcare are very persistent, are tenacious. They don't believe that there's a glass ceiling, or if they think there's a glass ceiling, it's truly glass that can be shattered. They believe they can do what they want to do.
Love it, love it. Tenacious. Believe there's no glass ceiling. Going after it. Dr. Jallal.
I think I would add to that, I agree with everything you have said. It's also women being very persistent. I think we can say that, absolutely persistent, and also passionate, about what they do, and the multitasking for me does come into effect.
Boy, I agree with that one. Multitasking, love it. Dr. Landa.
I agree with this completely, and I'll just add visionary.
Visionary, love that. So we have visionary, we have straightforward, break that glass ceiling, ensure that we're moving the healthcare arena forward, understanding that healthcare for the world is going to make a better world. We're now opening up to questions. We have about 10 minutes for questions from the audience for any of our panelists. Please ask questions. We want this to be a dialogue. I can see the hands going up right now. Don't rush. Yes, please. Do we have a microphone? Oh, we have one there, and then we'll come here. Go ahead.
My name is Katrina. I work for EHR. She told me to say that.
Yes, I want to know. Yes, we do want to know who you work for.
What about some of the other female traits? I mean, I go to these things and I don't hear about the patients and the accommodation and the nurturing. I mean, do those come into play with these strong women just as much as the rest of what you mentioned?
Panelists.
Absolutely. I think patience makes a major difference. When I see some of our top executives in the company and compare, I try not to compare very often, but when I do, patience plays a huge role. I mean, you find that women have a different level of patience that can take them further compared to their male counterparts.
Becca, you're nodding. Do you agree with that?
I do, and I think women are really great at understanding other people's perspective and being able to translate what they're thinking so other people can understand and jump on board, like we were just discussing about why do we care about healthcare in the world. Great question.
Great. Another question. We have one up front for a comment.
Yes.
Stand up and introduce yourself.
I'm sorry, I'm Rebecca Hoffberger, and founder and director here at the museum, and a happy camper to be with you all, and thank you for what you shared. You also said that it was a patient that transformed your life. So I think compassion is something that's so strong in you three. But my question is really for you, Rebecca. I understand that the DMS manual took autism and Asperger's out of the directory, was that a good thing in your opinion? Because it's more classified as a neurological phenomena and not a mental illness? Or was it?
So the New Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which is the holy grail for people who diagnose disorders, has revised how we diagnose autism. And so instead of now having 3 categories, that is autism, pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified, and Asperger's syndrome, there's just going to be called autism spectrum disorders, which I think is a good thing because usually people who don't work in the field every day get it wrong anyway, and so it just is going to be very clarifying for families and for the community at large.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes, we have a few back here. Just raise your hand so they see you, so they'll bring the mic.
Yes, hello. My name is Jhpiego. I'm the founder of Strategic Space, which is an international business training firm. And I want to start. I have a question. I want to comment on the traits. I'm also a global mindset facilitator through Thunderbird's School of Global Management. And there, so global mindset is a set of skills that makes us successful in international business, one of them being empathy. And research has shown that women do better in developing empathy than their male colleagues. So
we agree with that?
And it really impacts the ability to build trust, which is so important, right?
Very good. Very helpful. You have a question?
And the question, my question was to Rebecca. I was wondering what opportunities she sees in building partnerships with local nonprofit organizations in order to develop the perception of autism, and what kind of skills come into play in building partnerships around the world.
What kind of skills are needed to form partnerships around the world?
With local nonprofit organizations, for instance.
Right. So I would say certainly understanding the mission of the nonprofits and being a good communicator about what the disorder is and what we actually know about it, so that the nonprofits can understand that there is really a lot that can be done. You know, when you think about the behavioral sciences, people often think it's a much softer science, let's say, than the aspect of medicine where prescriptions are prescribed or medicines are prescribed. But I see all aspects of treatment and diagnosis of children who have autism spectrum disorder really the same as medicine, altering brain function. And so, to answer your question, what I think those partnerships are really important and probably not as the places they need to be.
I'll add one thing. I think in general, you know, the training is really important and the awareness is really important. Just want to share something I heard yesterday in HBI, very interesting experiments going on in Oregon, where they actually have a health coach, because it's not the access to the medicines, it's how, you know, it's being aware of what you take. So I know it's not on the diagnosis, I won't say it's the same thing, but in general, you know, that kind of awareness, and it's been done here now in the US. So can you imagine when we go to the outside how much that partnership of you know, it's the delivery and it's the awareness of all these things and the training is really important. But it's something to watch in Oregon. It's going really interesting experiment as well.
I think we also have to recognize as a global world, nonprofit sector has increased dramatically in all of our countries, including India, including many of the countries we work in. And so we have to see them as a likely partner for the work we're able to do. And again, looking at it and being respectful, building a partnership starts with respect for each other. And whether it's a local nonprofit in another country like Kenya or not, there is expertise within that. It's respecting their expertise and finding those ways to partner that make sense to both of you. Other questions? Yes, I have one down here.
Hello, my name is Ellen Meinhardt and I work for Starting Gate Global. I am a mother of a 12 and 15-year-old, and I am desperate to make, and both girls, and desperate to have one of them go into the STEM field. And it saddens me that I'm 46, and when I graduated from college, 17% women were in STEM, and today, still 17% women are in STEM. And I find that really sad, and I'm just wondering, number one, I know your mother encouraged you, which is, I'm trying to do the best I can, and get every girls in technology thing that she's has to apply for, but I'm just wondering if anybody's thought about how to address this. I think it's a big issue, I think, and I think somehow we need to turn this around. I think women are going to be second-class citizens if we do not get into these fields that are really the up-and-coming professions.
Well, Dr. Jallal, she's sitting there ready to answer this. And then I'm going to ask our other panelists to answer as well. No, Dr. Jallal.
Yeah, I'm dying to answer this one because I want to say...
She had that mic.
You know, we put a lot of emphasis, you know, we do what we can. I don't think enough to really encourage the girls and reach them and it is at the middle school, when they start the middle school, when the hormones are raging and they have other interests, and then all of a sudden they start the peer pressure there and they start listening. It takes one person, one teacher, one whatever to say you can't do math, and then they go away from it. So I would encourage more talking. You know, I do that with my kids all the time, but there are a lot of programs, like for instance at MedImmune, we bring those girls and all my leaders, you know, the women leaders are the ones showing them, and I had as a result one of my child went there and came back and said that Laura Richmond was cooler than me. So it's to encourage that, but at the same time, I think not to underestimate the peer pressure. With everything that I've done, my daughter came last week and said, I don't think I want to do medicine, and she's really good at science, and that's what she always wanted to do, and I don't know if she's going to do that, but she said, because I want to have kids and family, and you can't do both. She didn't hear that from me. So the more you keep on talking, and also there are tons of programs, getting them into science camps and everything, and it's all about building self-confidence in the girl at the middle school. That's just my opinion.
Other panelists.
Just to add to that, I think you have to encourage girls when they're younger, and more importantly, give them some real life examples. I'll give you my own example. When I was a kid, I thought I was going to be an artist. And then I saw my father building the company, at Chairman building the organization. He took me to my first meeting when I was 13 years old, and I was in awe. You know, when I graduated and wanted to go to pharmacy as opposed to architecture, he said, "Really? Do you want to do this?" I said, "Absolutely. I want to build your vision." So I think real life examples, getting them to experience real life examples are very important in building that awareness.
Dr. Landa.
I agree with all those comments. Math and science abilities really begin early in life in infancy. And so I would also add to these comments, helping children know that when they're judging whether or not their body can fit through a certain space, that's math and science. And so just putting those words to, oh, you estimated you could fit in there, and that is exciting. And you might say, oh gosh, that's so nerdish, but actually children need to, that's, I think, for Dr. Jallal's point, is helping them to know from the time they're toddlers that they can estimate, that they can tell what's more and what's less, and they will become very empowered and very confident. And I agree with everything everyone says.
Well, unfortunately, I wish we had more time, but I want to thank our panelists who, as you can see, are remarkable in and of themselves, have done great work. This day is about being able